Okay, well, I think we will get started. I'll call this regular meeting of council, Town of Oliver, May 25th, 2021. Call this meeting to order. Are there any late items to add to the agenda?
No, there are not, Your Worship.
Thank you. Get a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated.
So moved.
Moved. Second. Can I get a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. Call a question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Where are we at here? Going to rise and report. I'd like to rise and report that Mr. Ed Chow has been appointed as the Chief Administrative Officer for the Town of Oliver effective July 5th, 2021. Diane Vakovich has been appointed as acting CAO from June 1st until July 4th, 2021. Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone would like separated out of the consent agenda? Councillor Ventimiglia? You're on mute.
Thanks. I'm not sure. I don't have anything to be separated out. Sorry, my timing was just poor. Just the screen that we see on our iPads, is everybody's off focus like mine? I'm not able to see the meeting as we go through.
Mine's fine. I'm
Mine
fine.
looks good.
It's just you.
Do you require glasses?
I'll log out and come back in. I see like a super zoomed view and I can't see the meeting. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Try double tapping the screen. Mine did the same.
Too late, she's gone. She's gone.
Well, while Petra comes back in, nobody had any items to be moved off the consent agenda. So can I look for a proposed motion that the May 25th, 2021 consent agenda be adopted?
So moved.
Moved in second. Call a question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to business arising out of prior minutes. Item 1, temporary use permit 2020-18. Postponed resolution. Oliver United Church has advised the town that they are withdrawing the church as a location for the cold weather shelter. The motion that was moved and seconded is that council approved the temporary use permit 2020-18 and that as a condition of the permit, the following work to be completed as per figure 10 of the Director of Development Services report dated November 9th, 2020 to provide adequate emergency egress from the south side of the building to the street and provide privacy from 6242 Kootenay Street. A fence be installed along the eastern half of the south property line. And emergency access to the street be provided through an existing rock wall and staff be directed to issue the permit. That was the resolution that was moved and seconded, and then it was postponed. I will pass this over to the CAO just to make sure we get this process correct.
Thank you, Your Worship. What council will be required to do is vote on this particular motion. You will want to defeat it as the church has withdrawn their building for this cold weather shelter. So it's just a housekeeping where we have to clean this off of the books. So it's already been moved and seconded. So there's just a matter of voting on it at this point in time.
Everybody clear on that? Does anybody have any questions before I call the question? Not seeing any, I will call a question. Is anyone opposed to the motion?
I'm opposed.
I'm opposed.
I'm opposed.
I am also opposed. Councillor Ventimiglia?
Opposed.
Okay, thank you. Motion is defeated. We will move on to committee reports. And I will ask our chairperson from the committee of the whole meeting, Councillor Mattis, to give us a report from that meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. We had two items on our agenda today. One was the building bylaw 1404, which will come back to council on June 14th for first, second, and third reading. There's been a few small changes or changes within that throughout the process. It will be now a step for people to ask the town staff if there's any outstanding problems with builders, as their building permit may be refused if they pick the wrong builder. The second item was that policing costs. We had a report from the CFO regarding when and what we can expect. There are some concerns with funding that we may have. We may have shortfalls upcoming, but there'll be more work to be done in that area as well. And we received that report for information. That's it.
Thank you, Chairperson Mattis. Our next item, we got some delegation and petition, South Okanagan Immigrant Community Services. Cherry Fernandez will be the presenter, and Katrina Oliveira, Elmira Galiva, and Michael Lamont are the attendees. Are you unmuted, Cherry?
Yes.
Cherry?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Wonderful. So if
you're kind of quiet though.
Oh, okay. If I sit a little closer, is that a bit better?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Wonderful.
Well, if you're unmuted, I will pass it over to you to make your presentation. You'll have 10 minutes or so to do that, in which time council will maybe have a few questions for you.
Wonderful. Thank you. If I can, I'm going to share my screen right now.
Okay.
There we go. All right. Are you able to see that?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So thank you, Mayor Johansson and Council. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to come and speak with you here today. I'd like to first start off by acknowledging and appreciating that we are joining you here today on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Syilx people of the Okanagan Nation. My name is Cherry Fernandez. I am the Executive Director of the South Okanagan Immigrant and Community Services, or SOICS for short. I am joined here today by Elmira, Michael, and Katerina. We are an immigrant serving organization providing settlement services to the South Okanagan Similkameen. On the screen here, you can see these are our core services. We support permanent residents, naturalized Canadians, temporary foreign workers, and post-secondary international students. On April 4th, 2020, the immigrant serving sector was deemed an essential service industry. And so for SOICS, that meant that we had to quickly transition, as many people had to at that time, to remain responsive and accessible. For us, that meant we provided orientation and training on new technologies and online platforms. We hosted one-on-one homework club to support home-based learning. Many of those participants come from the Oliver area and School District 53. We offered intergenerational programming to really try to mitigate that isolation felt by a number of seniors, youth, and children. And in this past year, with a lot of the racial tensions that we have seen, we celebrated the diversity of our region with our very first virtual One World Festival. So as Canada's population was slowing down due to a lot of the border closures, we really had to learn a new way to interact and connect with newcomers in our region and increase our accessibility. This here provides a bit of a snapshot of who we had served, and it really increased in this past year because there was so much uncertainty throughout the country. At this time, we really want to highlight two different programs. And if I can invite Elmira, if you can take it from here.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me or see me. I hope so. I'm the coordinator of the Local Immigration Partnership. Next slide, please. So Local Immigration Partnership is a partnership table that brings together local governments, school boards, businesses, and community organizations to develop and implement a strategy for successful immigrant integration through collaboration. We do a number of projects, including research, tools development, capacity development activities. and much more. But today, because of the time limitation, I will just quickly tell you about one of our newest project, which is called Workplace Equity and Inclusion. So the goal of the project is to contribute to creating a more inclusive and diverse welcoming space workplaces. We have about 5 employers participating in the pilot project, and we have a number of tools to support them making a more welcoming and diverse workplace. And we use a broader definition of diversity. So we're not just talking about the immigrants, we also talk about the Indigenous community, people that have disabilities, LGBTQ2S plus community, seniors, and women. Next, please. And we're hoping that as a result of our project, through increased diversity and inclusion, will improve business outcomes for employers through talent attraction, employee commitment, and productivity. And we will also have improved labor outcomes for the whole region. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. So changing gears slightly, I'd like to familiarize you with the One World Youth Crew. So we are a youth navigated program that is facilitated by SOICS with the focus to create inclusive and welcoming communities in the South Okanagan. Just on this next slide here. So youth do really have the liberty to choose their own projects and decide what to implement or showcase. Generally, every 6 months, the group aims to complete a project that will benefit the community in some way. So how does it benefit the community? Aside youth gaining valuable volunteer hours, the chance to enhance your resume, gaining skills, participating in workshops, there's also the opportunity to contribute and be active members in our communities and the greater region. So activities such as art-based and media projects, along with multicultural learning, One World Youth adds to our communities by being more inclusive. So an example of this initiative is a project that rooted from noticing an increase in graffiti and vandalism, primarily related to race. So the youth crew began to explore ways to reduce vandalism and property damage, and this idea was named Project Vandal. So over the course of a few months, the youth crew explored ways to get involved in the removal of unwanted vandalism, but this led to actually an idea of the online reporting tool, which then led to a virtual collaboration over COVID-19 of meeting online of an explainer video through animated features that got turned into a script. So we know that each community has a strategy in place around graffiti, but we'd like to know as a youth crew how we can support and or add to your efforts. For example, when we receive the data from the reporting tool, is there a way to share this to show perhaps that the majority of the graffiti is race-based, gender, age-related? So either through the collection of data or the reporting tool itself, we'd like to know what we can further do to support our community. And another initiative that we have been working on is murals. We've painted an Okanagan-inspired one in the back of the SOICS office in Penticton, but it's a true goal of ours to see more murals and help accomplish this. So right now, there's a possibility of one in Oki Falls as well as Summerland, but we'd like to make more connections around a region where more youth reside. And it's a great way for us to all come together and put something forth collectively. On this next slide here, there is the explainer video that I talked about. There's the online reporting tool along with a little bit of social media from all of our projects. So hope you guys get the chance to check that out.
So within all of our services, diversity and inclusion remains a theme throughout it, through our core settlement services, our local immigration partnership, our One World Youth Crew, as well as a Respect Network, which we relaunched this year, that really works around anti-racism and diversity. One such is a video that we created that really showcased the contributions of newcomers in our region and how we can really find strength in working together, but also showing that racism really does affect our most vulnerable, including our children. This particular video was actually inspired by my daughter, when she was 3 years old, just turning 3 years old, and starting to really interact with children her age. And she asked me the question, "Mommy, do you like being brown?" So if I can, I'd like to share that with you right now. I'm just going to stop this so I can change to that there. Excuse me one moment.
Mommy, you like being brown?
Especially being new in this country, that this is stepping on toes.
Why do
We have a workshop in Alford. Why would you bother coming here?
I'm gonna say this.
So what?
So what? So what? So what?
The ER nurse is referring to disturbing allegations involving medical staff in emergency rooms playing racially motivated games. Person, if you're fight with someone, why don't you go back to the rest?
Mommy, you like being brown?
Baby, what do you see?
I see you, Mommy.
What do you see?
My accent, my culture, my appearance, my name.
This is not my whole story.
I am your neighbor. I build your home and workplaces.
I make sure your spaces are clean and safe.
I grow your food.
I bring your food to you.
I am an employer.
I am business owner.
I create jobs.
I help you in your future. I celebrate art.
I give back to the community.
I care for you.
I am a lifesaver.
I am on the front line for you.
I provide guidance.
I listen and offer comfort.
I am a teacher. I empower the next generation. I create innovation.
Face for possibilities.
We are connected. I am Kamloops.
I am Salmon Arm.
I am Vernon.
I am Kelowna. I am Beachland. I am Summerland. I am Penticton.
I am Oliver.
I am the Swiss. I see you.
I am mother.
Father.
Sister.
And brother.
Daughter.
Son.
Mentor. Friend.
I am your neighbor. I am your neighbor. I am your neighbor.
I am your neighbor.
I see you. Mommy, you like being brown?
Baby, I'm proud to be brown. But I am not alone. You are not alone. This is our community. These are our neighbors. Neighbors that will not be silent, but take a stand and make us stronger together. Color makes life beautiful. We are all connected. Our diversity makes us stronger together. Why fear our differences? Instead, share, learn, and appreciate the strength we have in our connection. To those that lift us up in times of crisis and uncertainty. To those that do their part every day, where we work, learn, play, and live. To those that recognize and value our connection. Thank you.
This video actually was motivated by the South Okanagan Chamber of Commerce. They reached out to us and asked, is there a way that we can help support this message of diversity? And this was the result of us picking up the camera and through trial and error, learning how to use it and hopefully spread that message. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. That was an excellent presentation, and the video is awesome. I hope that gets out. Are you putting it out on YouTube, and people can view it whenever they want to?
Yes, we have it on YouTube, and we'll make sure to share it as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jerry, and Katrina, and Elmira. Is anyone else from council have any questions or comments for our SOIC's delegation? Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Cherry and team, for the presentation. I just have to catch my breath. That I've seen that video a couple of times. I saw it when you launched it, and I think it's great. I don't know if that's the second one you've done or if you've done more than that, but every one that you've done is amazing and equally powerful. And so congratulations to everybody who comes up with those ideas, and thank you for sharing them with us. I have one question about the One World Youth crew. Where do you find your crew members, and how long are they a part of the crew? Is it sort of ever rotating or set sessions? Just interested about that.
So they actually, this is one of our different programs in that our youth are not just immigrant youth, but they're Canadian-born youth, Indigenous youth, all youth, and they come throughout the South Okanagan, Similkameen, and they currently meet online. But when we can meet again, we go throughout the South Okanagan for different meetings, for different projects that we have. And originally it was intended that we'd have them in 6-month cohorts. However, we found that many of our youth requested that they continue on, learning that they do have a voice and that there are places where they can make an impact. So many of our youth continue on, and some that were in our very first cohort are still with us today, a year and a half later.
And do youth reach out to you if they're interested, or do you find them in the schools?
Yes, so we advertise as much as we can, usually through the schools and through other organizations, to let them know that we are here. We make connections with other youth groups as well, so that, again, collectively, they can make more of an impact and learn from each other. Thank you.
And we're always looking for more. So if you have any recommendations, we're always open.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, thank you so much for the presentation, for the video. I know that some of those sound bites really got to me. Some of them I recognized from being fairly recent, and it's hard to hear, but it goes to show that many of our friends and neighbors are still dealing with racism, and it's, you know, it hasn't gone away. And so it's really important to have these educational tools available, you know, and for us to learn how we can be better allies. I think the video is just wonderful. I'm so glad that you shared it with us. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
I don't see any other hands up, Cherry. So again, I'll thank you and Katrina and Elmira for your presentation and for sharing that video with us. You guys are doing a great job and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll move on to water matters. The first item is the irrigation water meter 6583 Lakeside Drive. I will pass this over to the CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is before Council to seek direction regarding the irrigation water meter request from Arbor Lane Townhouse Complex. In March of 2021, the town was called out to Arbor Lane Strata due to a frozen irrigation meter. The meter was changed out and an invoice was forwarded to Arbor Lane Strata in the amount of $2,030.22 as per Water Regulation Bylaw 1351. Mr. Hagan, the Strata president, attended the town office as they were disputing having to pay for the replacement of the meter. The Finance Department and Public Works Department advised Mr. Hagan of the requirements of owners as outlined in Water Regulation Bylaw 1351, and as the meter had frozen, the cost to repair or replace the water meter was to be paid by the owner. Mr. Hagan then met with the CAO to have the invoice reversed, as the Strata felt it was the town's responsibility as the meter is on town property. Ms. Cowan advised she needed to get better understanding of the issue, and she would contact Mr. Hagan once she had spoken with both Public Works and the Finance Department. In doing the background research on this service, it was advised that approximately 10 years ago, the town dropped off a key to turn irrigation services off and on to all residential properties that had separate services to allow them to control their valves for blowing out their system at their convenience. This was done so the in-town properties would not have to phone the town to close or open their valves. The water operators had also tapped a drain to previous meters for this property as they didn't come with drains. The water operator provided instructions on how to drain the meter to ensure that it would not freeze to the landscape company that did all the irrigation for Arbor Lane, and there had been no issues with the meter freezing up until 2017. In 2017, the meter was replaced. However, it's unclear why it was replaced, and the Strata was not invoiced for that change out that we could find anywhere. In 2019, the meter was again replaced due to freezing as it was not drained. The water line between the curb stop at the meter and to their shut-off valve and blow-off area could still have standing water in it due to the fact that if it isn't dealt with, I guess, having standing water in it if it isn't dealt with. It should be noted that all replacement meters had been tapped out. Due to a number of staffing changes within the Finance Department, there was an oversight with respect to billing for the 2019 replacement meter. Also, Mr. Hagan indicated the Strata was unaware of the need to drain the meter, and the landscaping company that looked after the property had not changed. The new meter installed in this year is a Mach 10 design. It's one piece, uses inferred technology, which means there's no moving parts, and there's no way to drill and tap a drain into it. The water operator did advise that prior meters did have a drain, and it was being forgotten to drain the meter when they shut the system down for the season. The recommendation provided by the water operator and utility technician going forward was to ensure that the new meter didn't freeze, that the meter should be removed and drained so that no water was left in the drain. The 1.5-inch meter has several bolts to remove, and it isn't as easy as a 1-inch meter. Given the above information, it was determined to offer a reduced bill by 50%, and going forward, request the town to remove the meter in the fall and replace it in the spring at a cost of $100 per visit. Mr. Hagan felt that was a good solution and took it to the Strata, who voted and agreed to that offer. The Strata has now come back to council requesting that the bill be canceled and the town take on the responsibility and cost for removing and replacing the meter annually. I did attach their email with that request in it. In talking with the Director of Operations, irrigation lines aren't buried as deeply as water lines. And due to the size of this meter, it does not fit within a traditional meter pit and is in a concrete box. There's a number of photos attached, and there also the configuration of the location of the service. And it does show that the lid of the concrete vault does have insulation attached to it. There's also a hand sketch drawing that is included with respect to the configuration of how the service is being provided to the property. The Director of Operations advised there could still be standing water between their valve shut off in their box to the curb stop, as it blows, the blow off is after their valve. It should be noted that the meter box and their box are both located in the boulevard as well. Their box and lid is warped and does not close properly. The Director of Operations also advised that there's a possibility of the irrigation meter freezing, even if it is put down a couple of more feet, if there happened to be a cold snap. And there have been instances where this has happened to domestic lines where someone has been absent for a week. And council should also be aware that a property on Zinfandel had several issues with respect to their meter, and the property owner was responsible for paying for the meter replacements, and to alleviate the issue of freezing also covered the cost of a new configuration. So staff have provided some options for consideration by council with respect to this issue, and they are within the report. I will go over them with you. One is at the cost of the property owner, the water meter and concrete boxes could be dug deeper and keep the insulation attached on the inside of the lid. However, this could still freeze with any water that is still inside of the meter. Should the property want to undertake this solution, the town could attempt to configure the piping meter to be angled slightly so no standing water stays in the meter. This could help unless the line is fully loaded. The property owner can pay the town to remove and install the meter annually at a cost of $200. It would then be the town's responsibility should the town forget to remove it or something else goes wrong with it. They could have their lawn maintenance contractor or whoever blows the irrigation system out each year unbolt the meter and drain it each year. Should anything happen to the meter, the cost for replacement would be the responsibility of the property owner. Should be noted that canceling the invoice and taking on the cost for removing and installing the meter annually would be precedent setting, and staff do not recommend council consider this request from Arbor Lane Strata. There are 4 options for council. Council can determine to not reduce the original invoice for the replacement of the meter and provide the options identified in the report by staff to Arbor Lane Strata for resolving the issue of the meter freezing again, which would be at the Strata's cost. Council can determine that the reduced invoice of $1,015.11 for the replacement of the meter is to be paid by Arbor Lane Strata and provide the options identified in the report by staff. Again, those would be at the cost of the Strata. And council can determine to cancel the invoice for the meter replacement and absorb the cost of the annually removing and reinstalling the meter. Council can determine to undertake and absorb the cost of the work necessary to resolve the issue of the freezing meter. Staff recommend option 1. The financial part of this is it's estimated the modification would be approximately $2,500. That's really an approximate amount of money. And also I have quoted part of the water regulation bylaw sections that are relevant to this request.
Thank you, CAO. Any questions, council? Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to jump into the 4 options at this point, but I do have a question through to the Director of Operations regarding the setup that is there. When I go to the hand-drawn picture of the configuration, as a person that used to install irrigation systems, is it possible to move the shutoff and the blowout in between the curb stop and the meter. And I guess the question there is the meter damaged by air pressure because there's no moving parts? Is there any issues with blowing it out on the other side of the water meter?
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, you can't blow air through the water meters. It's generally not a good practice. I'm not sure with the newest versions, but the old versions, you definitely couldn't blow through. You could damage the parts inside.
They had moving parts. This one doesn't though.
Yeah, this one doesn't. I don't know how it would affect it at this point. I'm not as involved in the meters anymore the last few years and the technology.
I
So
understand.
I'm
just throwing it out as a potential solution that, you know, if you put the blowout on the other side of the meter, if this meter is not damaged, that might be something worth looking into. As far as the 4 options, thank you for that answer, by the way. As far as the 4 options go for myself, seeing as we've offered 50% discount once already, I would hate to back away from that. That's just kind of where I stand. In terms of repairing it, I certainly see that as the responsibility of the strata.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with Councillor Mattis. I think since we've offered the 50% discount and they accepted it on this one occasion, I think we should continue with that. But if they want to change their design or the pit depth or anything, that should be done at their cost. And the $100 in and out each time to remove the meter and put it back in would of course be their cost as well. Thank you.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did have a question, I guess, to the CAO just regarding the bylaw and the no-win situation that Mr. Hagan has described. Basically saying that they're required to protect the meter from freezing, but however, they're not allowed to open the cover or use any insulation or anything like that. So I was just looking for some clarification on that, if they are able to protect it themselves or if removing it is the only option.
What he indicates through the chair to Councillor Grice, what he indicates in there is that they're prohibit us from opening or closing the curb stop, not the actual and uncovering and restricting the access by covering it with any other material. But I do believe in the past we have enabled them to drain the meter. So they're going in to drain it. So they are going into that box. I might want to refer this to the Director of Operations with regards to insulation being put in there or any additional insulation being put in there, because I'm not that familiar with how these things all work.
Thank you. And I will clarify after so he says section 48, the same bylaw prohibits us from opening or closing the curb stop, and then also uncovering the meter and restricting access by covering it with any other material, e.g. insulation.
Through the chair, I can answer some of that. Generally, we don't want people tampering with all of our domestic meters, but there are some irrigation meters out there where this is the case, where they may have to do some work and we allow them. We've also made keys for properties, as mentioned by the CAO, for several properties in town where they could shut their curb stop off and then blow out their systems. And we just found that easier because there aren't that many properties in town that need that service. And like the CAO mentioned, there was a drain on the bottom of the meter, and apparently some years it worked, or somebody remembered to do it, or we got lucky, and then other years it wasn't done.
So to follow up then, is this an option for this particular case that they could use some sort of insulation to prevent freezing? Or I don't know if this has been discussed with them or not, but, or if that's a viable option.
The insulation wouldn't really work at that depth. If there's standing water between the curb stop and their shut off, which flows through the meter, there could be water in the meter, in the belly of the meter, could still cause damage. The best way to prevent that damage is to unbolt 4 bolts and pull it out and drain it. It's really that simple, but somebody has to do it.
Thank you.
Councillor Bentamila.
Thank you, Worship. One of my questions was, was just asked and I think answered. I was going to point out the same sort of contradictory information and ask if even if they were allowed to put anything in there like insulation, would there be anything that they could put to prevent the freezing, which I think I heard no. So that answers that one. The other question that I had is there actually a depth that this could be dug to, I guess, that would, like, is there a depth that this meter could sit at permanently without issue, without freezing? Or is this just an issue they're going to have no matter if it's where it is right now or a foot lower or 2 feet lower, those sorts of things? And then the last question that I have is this an issue at any of the other stratas with, I'm assuming, similar configurations in town?
Through the chair, putting it 2 feet deeper isn't really going to resolve that. We've had meter pits, the regular meter pits that we have that are insulated, that are 4 feet or 5 feet bury, and they've frozen. When you have standing water and it's not being used, there's a larger chance or a bigger chance of it freezing during a cold snap. This meter just sits there the whole winter, and if there's water in it, it'll freeze, whether it's 2 feet or 4 feet. It depends on the weather. I mean, you can, we've had people have heat tape put on certain lines and meters, but then you have to run electrical out there, and it's, and then as far as the stratas, we have different configurations because we had to go in and retrofit all these meters back in 2009, 2010. There's different configurations everywhere, and not all of them are the same. And I'm not sure if, I'm trying to think of one that's similar to theirs, and I'm sure there is, but I just can't think of it right now, or we haven't had any issues with them.
Councillor Michelle.
Just want to agree with most of what's been said as far as, but I got a question through to the CAO, and in your part of the report, I don't see where he was offered a 50% from your perspective reduction. And yet in his letter, he's stating that you told him that. So I just want some clarification on that.
Yes, I did indicate
Is it in
that.
here? Where is it?
Where did I read that?
Oh, here we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, since we've offered it, I mean, you speak for the town, then I think we should stick behind that. I agree with the rest of council. I think that if there were ever was a reason to not install irrigation meters, and we've had this discussion in the past, this would be it. Can you imagine the nightmare we would have in the rural area if we put irrigation meters in everybody's farms? This would be like, I'm opposed to it because it was in 19 whatever dollars, it was going to cost $5 million. I mean, just the cost alone, that's the main reason I'm opposed to it. But this is a prime example as to the nightmare that we would be creating for the town. So anyway, I agree with the rest of council, and I think we should, whatever that option was, which was the option 2, is what I would, I'd like to move that. Make that a motion.
I'll second.
Okay.
Moved in second. Did you have your hand up for a follow-up, Councillor Ventimiglia?
I did. I mean, I agree with the proposed motion that's on the floor. I just had one more question for clarification before we get to the vote, I suppose, if that's all right. Just for my understanding, and I think I'm getting there. So we're in this position because they had a meter that they were either forgetting to drain or got lucky some years, which damaged things. And because we had to replace that meter, we're now in a position where that's no longer possible. And the only remedy is to remove and replace every year.
Through the chair to Councillor Ventimiglia, that's the meter that is going in there now does not have the ability to be tapped out to put a drain in it. So the solution that has been provided, the means for going forward that have been provided by the water operators and the utility technician is to have it removed in the fall and put back in the spring, or look at possibly providing some sort of looking at how they could possibly modify it to get it deeper, but or angle it so that it does it does drain. But the director of operations indicated that once you start angling some of these meters, they might not read properly. So the best solution is to remove it in the fall and put it back in the spring.
Councillor Michelle?
Yeah, just curious, how many of these properties do we have in the town? And how are other people dealing with it?
Through the chair, in my report, it does talk to a property on Zinfandel that had the same type of issue with their meter, and it froze, and they were responsible for replacing it a number of times, and then they did actually pay for modifications so that it would no longer freeze. I'm not sure if that was a 1.5-inch meter or a 1-inch meter, but it was, this one's a different size than the usual meters that I'm aware of.
So we only have the two properties, or do we have quite a few properties where they have irrigation meters separate from their domestic meters?
I can answer that more, Pat or Kathy. Through the chair to Councillor Michelle. There's a bunch of different configurations. Some properties have multiple irrigation meters, but they're at each location where we had to put them in, they may be 1 inch or 3/4 inch, so they're in a deeper pit. There haven't been any issues with those ones for whatever reason, but this one's 1.5 meter. It has to go into a box. Yeah, and we don't have many properties. Some of the bigger stratas have one large meter. Some have multiple meters. It just really depended on the configuration and the services going to the property and trying to capture all the water on the property. It's just, to my knowledge, there's only 2 properties we've had problems with this, with the irrigation meters. The one on Zinfandel and now this one.
Okay, that answers the question.
Any other questions or discussion on the motion that's been moved and seconded? Not seeing any or hearing any, then I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. We'll go to item 2. Water utility leak adjustment policy is before us for adoption. I'll pass this over to our CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is in front of council to request them to adopt the water leak adjustment policy. At the April 12th Committee of the Whole Meeting Council requested that the current water leak adjustment policy be amended to reflect leak letters and meter readings be completed on a quarterly basis. The attached policy has updated section 3.4 to include at the end notification will be on a quarterly basis by the town, either by electronic or mail notification. The options in front of council are you may adopt the water leak adjustment policy, you may amend the water leak adjustment policy further, or you may retain the existing water utility leak adjustment policy. And the recommendation is that council adopt the water utility leak adjustment policy as presented in the Chief Administrative Officer's report at the May 25th, 2021 regular council meeting.
Thank you, CAO. Any questions for the CAO?
I'll move the proposed motion.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Can I get seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. Any further discussion or questions? Not hearing any, I will call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 3, the water regulation amendment bylaw 1351.09 for adoption. CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. This was provided the first 3 readings at the May 10th meeting, I do believe. And it's dealing with amending some sections under owner's responsibility. I think that's with respect to black flow preventers. And it also talks to metered user fees and just making sure that it's some clarification around some of those sections. So it is there to be adopted now.
Thank you, CAO. Can I get a mover that the council adopt water regulation amendment bylaw 1351.09?
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Second. Any questions or discussion before I call the vote? Not seeing any, I will call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Anything to report, Water Councillor Sadhu?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just this afternoon's meeting and tonight's meeting.
Thank you. And Water Councillor Michelle, anything to report this evening?
Just this evening's meeting, Your Worship. I was in Kelowna till 6 o'clock. So. And I'll have to leave the meeting. I've got some other phone calls I've got to make. So we'll see you guys later.
Okay. Have a good evening, Water Councillor Michelle.
Yep.
Moving to development permit variance permits. First item, development variance permit 6654 Bellevue Drive. I will pass this over to the Director of Development Services.
Excuse me. Thank you, Worship. I'll share my screen here. Oh, looks like I'm disabled participant. If we're able to change that, Diane, please. Rochelle, thank you. There we go. All right, this application is for a development variance permit 6654 Bellevue Drive. The applicant is proposing to construct a single-family dwelling with an attached garage. To facilitate the construction as proposed, a variance to zoning bylaw number 1380 is required. The variance is to section 10.1.6A1 to decrease the minimum front parcel line setback from 4.5 meters to 2.1 meters. Property location map, you can see the property highlighted in yellow. It fronts on both Meadows Drive on the low side and then Bellevue Drive on the high side on the east side. That's a zoomed in version showing the ortho. The zoning is RS1 and the OCP is LR, low density residential. Photos of the subject property on the left shows the Bellevue Drive of this elevation of the subject property. Same thing on the right. You'll see there's a drop here. The proposed driveway would go sort of through where the red star is and down into the property. On the left shows the east elevation of the subject property. On the right is a photo showing the Meadows Drive elevation, looking up towards the property. This is an elevation showing the south side of the subject property. And this photo makes it clear the stakes there in the ground. Well, actually, you can see the arrow is the northeast pin. So the property line is actually quite a ways from the road. So the setback is measured from that pin. The stake in the ground is the original 4.5 meter setback when it was originally proposed to be built, and then the plans were revised to propose a 2.1 meter setback. So that red line gives council an idea on where the front of that building would sit. The site plan here shows the building. You'll see that the northeast corner is where it sits at 2.134 meters. And then it also sits a little bit close at the corner, sort of midpoint of the building, sits at 3.917 meters. And then down at the garage, it sits back way beyond the 6 meter required setback, meaning that 2 vehicles could park on the property, no problem. When it's actually built, they may need to expand the driveway a little bit so a car could turn around a little bit easier, but I don't see any challenges with that. I also wanted to point out there was some comments sent in from the neighbors about, where is the building going to sit on the property? Well, the current elevation of Bellevue sits at 1,021. I don't know, are you able to see my mouse, Mayor Johansson, right here?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So it sits at 1,021 feet here. This is the existing elevation. There was a previous topographic survey that was completed on the property. So all the blue numbers here are existing elevations, so 1,020. So you'll see 1,012 is where the building is going to sit. There is a drop, and the garage slab here is at 1,015. So 1,015, the existing driveway elevation at Bellevue is 1,021. So there'll be about a 6-foot drop, and currently it sits at about 1,012. So what that means is approximately 3 feet of fill, whether that's backfill, it will be propped up a little bit, and it'll sit a little bit closer to Bellevue Drive, but that will hopefully give council an idea that it will sit a little bit higher than that existing grade that I identified here. It will sit a few feet higher than this, but overall, if that is 1,020 and it sits at 1,015, the garage slab, that's 5-6 feet. And then from the main floor elevation of the house, which I'll show you right here, this is probably 14-15 feet. So we'll sit 15, sorry, math lesson here, but 15 minus the 6 feet. So it will sit approximately, 8 feet above the elevation of Bellevue to the top of the roof of the building. If that's confusing, I can help answer questions on that later. But I'll just go back to the site plan here. Also, the side rendering kind of gives you an idea on where Bellevue Drive is and where the garage will sit. It's not like the garage will sit right at the level of Bellevue Drive. It will drop that amount that I spoke about. Main floor plan, you'll see 2-bedroom plus a den with the garage. And this is a lower floor plan that shows a family room and extra bedrooms and storage. There's the building elevations we talked about. So it's sort of that 1 story from Bellevue Drive with the drop, and then 2 stories on the rear elevation. That also gives council an indication on where the grade is and the height of the building. Staff comments, shifting the building slightly to the east and a higher elevation enables a driveway that's not as steep and is safer for a future resident. The boulevard area is approximately 7.5 meters in width, meaning that the northeast corner of the building will sit approximately 30 feet from the road. This reduces any negative visual impact on the street. Furthermore, there is a row of cedars along the north property line, which will provide a buffer from the proposed dwelling. The garage is set back, as I talked about, the appropriate 6 meter distance and then some, leaving ample space for a second vehicle to park in front of it. So although a dwelling can be built on the subject property within the required setbacks, the proposed variants allow for a flatter driveway with limited to no impacts on the neighboring properties. With that, the 3 options for council is they may choose to support the recommendation, may choose not to, or may choose to refer back to staff. The staff recommendation is that council approve development variance permit 2021-14 and that staff be directed to issue the permit. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Director. Questions for the Director of Development Services? Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. The question would be that if we did not grant this variance and the house had to move back the 2 or 3 feet that we're talking about, what change in elevation would that do to the residents? How much of a drop would it cause? How much longer would the driveway be?
2 or 3 meters, not feet.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Councillor Mattis, you're asking if it is built at the 4.5 meters, then there would be that additional few feet that the building likely would end up in more fill on the property and a steeper driveway. Because the lot slopes from west to east, or other way around rather. So it'd end up being a steeper and longer driveway.
So, but the question would be if they put more fill and built at the same elevation, you're only looking at the same, everything would be the same. Except there would be more yard between the house and Bellevue. Everything would sit at the same elevation.
Yeah, that's definitely.
Or are you suggesting they would drop the elevation of the house?
I mean, I can. Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't speak for them, but.
So we might need more information.
It's possible if that's what council feels is they need more information. That's always an option.
I'm just wondering, if they stay at the same elevation, then they end up with more turnaround space. If they lower the elevation, then it impacts the neighbor's view less, and it creates a slightly steeper driveway, but creates more room to turn around. I'm just trying to throw out the options here, and trying to understand what we're approving or not approving.
Any other questions, Council? Councillor Ventimiglia?
Thank you, Worship. I'm in support of the variance, or the concept of the variance as I understand it, but I would like a bit more clarification on the parking as well, just because it was brought up in one of the neighbor feedback forms. And so just to the director, you mentioned that there should be, I think you said there should be, or there would be enough space in the driveway for a second vehicle, and that they may need to expand the turnaround room there at some point in time. So my question is just, is that not something that we should make sure of as a part of the variance permit, like have the actual numbers and make sure that that's going to fit as a part of the variance permit before going ahead?
Sure, through the chair, just to answer that. I mean, they can fit, what we normally look for is, can they fit the vehicles on the property? Does it say in our bylaw that you can't back up your driveway and back onto the road? We could encourage them to put a turnaround in and drive out, but ultimately I can't imagine it's a bylaw requirement, as long as the number of spaces can fit on the property.
Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. Through to the Director of Development Services. So the setback, the boulevard is 7.5 meters, and there's another 2 meters. So that's like 9 meters, which is 30 feet off the street. Is that, as opposed to 36, if there was no variance, is that in line with the setback for the other houses on that side of the street, or would that be a change? Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll look at the photos here to kind of give you an idea. It would sit a little closer than this blue house on the south side, but it would be similar to the house's garage. The neighboring house to the south's garage sits closer. On the north side, I can't, the hedges are in the way. I'd have to bring up an ortho view, so I can't quite give you that. But it is a fair distance, as you described, beyond 30 feet from the actual road. So I can't imagine that there's an issue with, with the aesthetics of the street in terms of buildings being set back from it.
Councillor Mattis, you had your hand up. Is it?
I'm good.
Question? You're good?
Yep.
Okay.
Your worship, I'll move the proposed motion.
Motion that council approve development variance permit 2021-14 and that staff be directed to issue the permit. Yeah. Can I get a seconder on that?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? Where's my participants? I don't see any, so I will call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to bylaws. First one, Southern Interior Bylaw Notice Dispute Adjudication Registry Agreement Authorization Amendment Bylaw 1282.01. Say that 3 times fast.
Yeah.
We'll pass this over to the corporate officer. It's here for first, second, and third reading.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I win the prize for the longest title of a report. The purpose of this report is to introduce the amendment bylaw 1282.01 to council. As a little bit of a background, this bylaw was brought into play in November of 2010 by council to allow Oliver and other southern municipalities to enter into the dispute adjudication registry system that we've been with for another, well, since 2010. This agreement is reviewed on a regular basis. It's adjusted just to add new members. Other municipalities do come in as they now move to the dispute adjudication process. Schedule A attached to the bylaw expired in 2015. Since then, we've had a couple of renewals, and the most recent one agreement was signed that expires December 31st, 2024. The terms and conditions of that agreement have not changed, except I said with the adding of new municipalities that have joined the dispute adjudication process in the South Okanagan. The delegation bylaw has enabled the town's signing authorities to execute these renewal agreements without bringing to council for consideration. We're preparing to bring a bylaw amendment forward to council, and we've determined that this bylaw has not had Schedule A updated 2 or 3 times since the renewal of these agreements. So it's recommended to council to remove item 2 in the bylaw that allows us, that the original agreement is still there, but it enables us not to bring the renewal agreements forward to council for consideration because we haven't done it since 2010, as you can see. But we would, of course, bring the agreement forward if any terms and conditions were changed that would require council's reconsideration for that agreement. So the options are that council give first 3 readings to the Southern Interior Bylaw Notice Dispute Adjudication Registry Agreement Authorization Amendment Bylaw 1282.01. Council can choose not to amend the bylaw, or you can refer back to staff for additional information. And I'll read it for you, Mayor Johansson, that the recommendation is that the Southern Interior Bylaw Notice Dispute Adjudication Registry Agreement Authorization Amendment Bylaw 1282.01 be read a first, second, and third time, and that amendment bylaw be brought forward to the June 14th regular council meeting to council for adoption. And I could take any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions for the corporate officer? Not seeing any. Can I
I'll
get a-
move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. Get a seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? Not hearing any, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 2 is the traffic amendment bylaw 650.02 for adoption. Motion is that council adopt the traffic amendment bylaw 650.02. Can I get a mover of that motion?
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion or questions on the motion? Not hearing any, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to business. The first item is the 2021 capital budget review. I will pass this over to our Director of Operations.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our CFO and myself had got together and discussed from the previous meeting where we could find up to $130,000 in our general capital budget to pay for the cost overruns on the bridge maintenance for this year. Doug put the report together. So Doug, did you want to talk about anything in particular, or should we, is he on?
Yeah, no, I'm here. Thank you through the chair. Sean and myself got together and we've identified 4 projects that have not started yet. The 4 projects are the Kootenai Street, Okanagan Street and School design. They were all slated to start the design work in 2021, as well as the asset management plan, the grant application that was forwarded to the province. It was oversubscribed, so therefore we weren't eligible in 2021. Those total savings, if those projects are removed from the capital budget and moved into the 2022 capital budget, will be $118,000, leaving approximately $12,000, which could be funded out of the road capital reserve. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, CFO. Any questions for the Director of Operations or the Chief Financial Officer? Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you, Your Worship. When I read the recommendation, my first thought was, well, what project are we going to do next year? Because it looks like we're taking off all of the prep work for any of the larger projects that we've been considering. But then the follow-up thought was, I think we have Airport Street on the books for next year. So I just want to clarify that that's correct. So we do have a decent sized street rehab project that would still be ready to go for next year if we take all of these design projects off the table right now.
Through the chair to Councillor Ventimiglia. Yes, that's correct. We were hoping to do the Packing House Lane and Airport Street because that project's underway right now, and it'd be a good time to finish the street around that complex for next year.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions. Will we be doing Station Street this year? That's going to happen for sure this year?
That is the hope. They're tweaking the designs. We gave them a bit of feedback. We've gone back and forth in order to make the geometry work in the street and getting some parking spaces and everything else. So I'll touch base with True, but when I talked to Steve last, he said that it still could be done this year.
Okay. Through the CFO, given the discussion regarding policing this afternoon, is there going to be greater pressure on our budget next year for capital projects, that sort of a thing, from an operational perspective, so to speak? speak. I mean, it's not too late to put a hold on Station Street. I know the rest of council won't want to hear this, but we will have, we're giving up all of our engineering on School Street. We don't have the engineering done yet on Airport Street, and we're hoping to complete it next year. It'll all be done on the basis of debt, just as we're doing Station Street with debt. It concerns me when I look at the operation side of it, as well as the capital side, that maybe we should be taking on smaller projects and saving some of our money for the must-do bigger projects where we actually have a building being built on Airport Street and Packing House Lane. Just throwing that out there. Welcome any feedback from whoever else might have something to say.
I'd like to move the proposed motion.
Can I get a seconder?
I'll second.
Any other comments, council? I guess before I call the vote, I would just want to echo Councillor Mattis's concerns as well. I think we're stretching ourselves pretty thin here, and I guess a question to the Director of Operations is, what are the contracts coming in for roadworks and stuff like that? Do you think, would you be surprised that Station Street would come in over budget?
Through the chair, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, but we really don't know until really don't know until you put it out the tender, and then maybe at that time we can have that discussion and see what the bids come in at.
Yeah, I mean, that's my main concern, is that we don't have enough money, and we're going to have to borrow money to possibly do Station Street. And then we have the Airport Street Packing House Lane project that we have to do next year to support that development that's going on there. So, and then with the RCMP funding, it definitely is a red flag for me. I sure hope it comes in under budget, because if it comes in over budget at all, I think that we're going to really have to make some tough decisions how much we're willing to continue to borrow to do projects that aren't necessarily necessary in the town of Oliver. Those would be my comments. Unless there's any other questions or comments, I will call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion?
I'm opposed.
Motion is carried. Moving to item 2, alternative approval process, Fire Department pumper truck loan authorization bylaw 1403. Pass this over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before council is to seek your direction with regards to proceeding with an alternative approval process with regards to the Fire Department pumper truck authorization bylaw 1403. An AAP, we gave a little bit of a highlight to council in March, but it does enable local governments to engage citizens about a bylaw to undertake long-term borrowing. It enables eligible electors, residents and non-residents, to voice their opposition after the second notice has been published in the paper through an elector response form to the corporate officer. 10% of the eligible electors, if they submit elector response forms, my number I think is 470, the local government cannot proceed with the matter in the proposed bylaw without first holding assent voting, which in this case would have to be done within 80 days after the deadline established for the AAP. As a bit of a background, the fire truck loan authorization bylaw received 3 readings in March 22nd. The bylaw and supporting documentation was forwarded to the Inspector of Municipalities for statutory approval, which I attached to my report, and we received that on May 11th, 2021. The bylaw is now before council to go through the process seeking approval of the electors by way of an AAP. The community charter states that for each AAP, a council must establish the deadline for receiving elector responses, establish the elector response form, and make a fair determination for the total number of electors to which the approval process applies. So I've outlined each section that you must do. For the deadline for receiving elector responses, they would be 30 days following the day on which the second notice is published in the paper. So with meeting advertising deadlines in the first couple of weeks in June, 30 days after that would be July 12th. The AAPs or the ERF can be accepted by mail, email, fax, or in person prior to the established deadline, and postmarks would not be accepted. The elector response form is attached to my report as well for council's review. The eligible electors within the town boundary, that's our total boundary. If 10%, 470 of the estimated number of electors sign and submit an ERF opposing the bylaw, as I said, that council cannot adopt the bylaw and we would have to go to assent voting, which would be a referendum. Council also needs to make a fair determination on the total number of electors to which the approval process applies. It's estimated that the total number of eligible electors in the town of Oliver, estimating the 2020 Statistic Canada numbers, I went on their website and then reduced the number of electors who would be under 18 who would not be eligible to vote. And it's been determined that there would be 4,730 eligible electors in our communication or in our boundary. So 10% would be the 470. Communication would be through the Times Chronicle, and it'll be available at Town Hall, and it is available, will be available on our website. We've got the page prepped and ready to go to open up once all these forms have been approved by council. So the options before council is that council may choose to support the recommendation to proceed with the alternative approval process. You may choose not to proceed with an alternative approval process and proceed with a referendum, or you may defer to staff for additional information. And the recommendation before council is that the corporate officer be directed to undertake an alternative approval process, determine the opinion of the electors with regards to the fire department pumper truck loan authorization bylaw 1403, and that council endorse the following with regards to the fire department pumper truck loan authorization bylaw 1403, that the deadline for receiving elector responses by 4 p.m. on July 12th, 2021, and that the elector response form attached to the report dated May 25th, entitled Fire Department Pumper Truck Authorization Bylaw 1403, elector response form be approved, and that the estimated number of eligible electors for which the alternative process applies be established at 4,730. And I can take any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Any questions for the corporate officer? Can I get a mover of the proposed motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion or questions? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to our last item under business, the South Okanagan-Similkameen Child Care Action Plan report. I'll pass this over to our Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to present the South Okanagan-Similkameen Child Care Action Plan report, which was a regional approach to child care planning involving several municipalities in the area. At the November 12, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting, Council passed a resolution to support the regional district grant application to the UBCM Community Care Child Planning Fund. The application was a partnership between CareMeus, the RDOS, Summerland, Oliver, and Princeton. The multi-jurisdictional steering committee reviewed 8 proposals for the project and awarded the project to Spark BC. The project involved conducting a needs assessment, developing community profiles, conducting research on successful practices, defining quality childcare, and reviewing local policies. After engaging with the communities, the steering committee agreed upon targets and a final report was produced. The regional findings show that there is a significant shortage of childcare spaces. The costs of childcare are too expensive, and there's a shortage of experienced early childhood educators. Regional and consistent targets for new childcare spaces were set, which included 33 spaces per 100 children for under 3-year-olds, 50 spaces per 100 children for 3 to 5-year-olds, and 33 spaces per 100 children for school-aged children. And this was a regional approach, so they set a goal that is obtainable by the whole area. So, for example, the study revealed that Oliver is doing far better than the neighboring municipalities and regional districts in terms of the number of childcare spaces available per children. The only target shortfall is in the under 3-year-olds, in which 10 new spaces are required by 2031. That being said, the study did reveal that the existing daycares in Oliver are full with several wait lists and that more spaces are needed beyond the target set by this study. So that's the key, is that there is more work that needs to be done. Going forward, the province has announced a commitment to universally public funded $10 a day daycare, as well as the integration into the Ministry of Education by 2023. Local and regional governments do not have the mandate or resources to fully address the unmet needs for childcare on their own. But by working together, the region's communities can support each other in joint ventures to build capacity in the region. A copy of the Child Care Action Plan, the entire report, will be put onto our website and back with background information. A PowerPoint summary specific to Oliver has been attached to this report. So with that, the recommendation is that Council receive the South Okanagan-Similkameen Child Care Action Report for information only. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for the Director or comments on the action report? Not seeing any. Can I get a mover of the proposed motion?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to correspondence, I'll pass this over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, getting my report up. The May 25th Council report for correspondence has 3 items for action. The first being, it's a little bit of a follow-up from Ms. Peters from her human trafficking, sexual exploitation and child sex trafficking in BC presentation to Council. She was asked to submit some sample letters of support to the town with the request to send letters of support to both the provincial and federal ministries, or Council may choose to defer to staff for additional information. So the motion is that Council direct staff to draft letters of support to both the federal and provincial ministries with regards to the human trafficking and sexual exploitation.
I'll move the proposed motion.
To Councillor Grace. Can I get a seconder?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion or comments on the motion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried.
Thank you, Your Worship. The second item is before Council from UBCM, outlining the auxiliary RCMP program, a survey that local governments can participate in. They're seeking to understand the community perspectives and preferences related to auxiliary policing. The survey is attached to the correspondence report in that piece of correspondence. The resolution is that Council may wish to complete the survey independently to meet the May 30th, 2021 deadline, or Council just may wish to receive and file.
Anyone want to move the proposed motion or make a motion to receive and file?
I'll move the proposed motion, please.
Thank you. Councillor Mattis.
I was just going to move the motion.
Can I get you
So I'll
to-
second.
Perfect. Any questions, comments? Call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried.
Thank you. And the third piece of correspondence was brought forward at the request of Councillor Grace. It was correspondence dated May 14th from the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General regarding submission of a nomination to the 2021 Community Safety and Crime Prevention Awards. There is a proposed motion that Council may wish to nominate one or the other, the Crime Watch, Oliver Crime Watch, or possibly the Community Safety and Crime Prevention South Okanagan Situation Table for the 2021 Community Safety and Crime Prevention Awards. Or you may wish to receive and file.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the corporate officer, are we able to nominate ourselves twice? Can we put in a nomination for both or for all three combined? I know you had mentioned because I think you said we've nominated ourselves for Crime Watch a few times without any success.
We've nominated Crime Watch and Mr. Johnson 2 or 3 times with no success. And I don't know if we could submit 2. I don't think that they would oppose receiving 2.
Because I guess, I mean, if we could group it all together, it might be a little bit stronger, but I don't like, because I think the situation table sort of came from the CSCP, so those could be grouped, but I don't know if we could put the Crime Watch in there with it as, you know, a community effort as a whole.
Yeah, I kind of see them as different items.
Yeah. I mean, if we could do 2, I think that doesn't hurt. Toot our own horn twice.
CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. You might want to consider for the South Okanagan Situation Table nominating it next year, because currently right now it's just in development, so it hasn't had the opportunity to move it forward at this point in time.
I thought of that also, and just maybe that it could, if we did the CSCP, it could just be mentioned that this has, you know, resulted from and will be implemented going forward. So I would, I guess, move that council nominate both the Crime Watch and the CSCP with mention of the South Okanagan Situation Table for the 2021 Community Safety Crime Prevention Awards.
I would second that. Any further comment or discussion? CAO?
I just have one comment with regards to the nomination for the committee. It would probably be really good to focus in on the work plan that was developed and adopted by them, because there has been a number of things over the last 2 years that have been undertaken to make the community safer from that strategic plan that was developed.
Yeah, thank you, CAO. I think that would be, that's a good document. Definitely referencing it in the application or the nomination would be worthwhile. Councillor Grice, did you still have your hand up, or is it just, okay.
Sorry.
No worries. Not seeing any further hands up or comments. I will call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried.
Thank you. And to wrap things up, there is a reply sent under existing policies. It was a reply back from Minister Baines and Minister Mark to our correspondence regarding the laid off hotel workers. That's attached for your information. And also for information is a email dated May 14th from Kent Mullenix from the Kwantlen Polytechnic University. He's releasing the final project and report and accompanying research and policy briefs regarding the Okanagan Bioregion Food System Project. They came and presented to council a year or so ago, if I recall, and to the regional district, I believe. And the proposed motion that the items listed in M4 and the weekly mail be received.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Call Call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to council reports. Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you, Worship. On Wednesday, May the 12th, I attended a Primary Care Network Advisory Committee meeting. And then today, along with Councillor Schwarzenberger, we started the 5-week Resilient Civic Leadership training course. And it started really well. I think it's going to be a great opportunity. So thanks to the rest of council for allowing us to attend.
Thanks, Councillor Ventimiglia. Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. The same meeting that Councillor Ventimiglia referenced earlier today, and today's 2 meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Worship. On Wednesday, May 12th, I attended an Unbox Project brainstorming meeting. So this is an anti-racism initiative of the South Okanagan Respect Network, also in collaboration with SOIC. So we saw some of those ladies in their presentation today. So the Unbox is the idea, it's a box basically, which contains tools for people better understanding racism and becoming allies. So we're just talking about what's going to go in the box, those sorts of things. So that's quite exciting. Monday, May 17th was a 100 by 100 project meeting. So one side project within that I'm spearheading is a storyteller series. So we're looking for OIB and Oliver residents to tell their stories. So we're looking for sort of any types of performance art. You could sing or dance or read poetry or just tell your story, or if being on stage is not your jam, then you could just submit your story because we have some actors on standby as well. So if that's something you're interested in, you could just let us know that you're interested at, you can email submissions@venablestheatre.ca and we'll get back to you and give you more information. Also on the 17th was an Oliver Parks and Rec Society meeting, and then today's meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. On May 19th, the ORL, or Okanagan Regional Library Board meeting, and also on May 19th, the Oliver Heritage Society Annual General Meeting. And I missed all of today's meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. For myself, on May 12th, I had a Heritage Committee meeting and an Oliver Clinic Advisory Committee meeting led by divisions. On May 19th, I had the Oliver Crime Watch check presentation, and the Heritage Committee AGM was held later that day. And on May 20th, our DOS. Upcoming meetings, our next open regular meeting is June 14th. Acting mayor schedule for the rest of May is Councillor Mattis, and for June, July, and August is Councillor Grace. Public question period, I don't believe we have anybody in attendance, so I would think we have nobody to ask a question. So I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second?
Second.
Call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you, Council. Have a good evening.
Night, everyone.
Night.
Good night.